எடுக்க சொல்ல முதல்ல. லைட் ஆன்.
லைட் வேண்டாம்.
டெக்ஸ்ட் வேண்டும். Mahadriyo Namaha. Friends, I've been thinking on this topic for a long time. It's very clear to me and perhaps to many of you that there are two distinct religious traditions in the world. Some of them have a good following, some others may not have. One tradition doesn't believe in conversion. A Jew is born, mother has to be a Jew. A Zoroastrian is born of Zoroastrian parents. A Hindu is born a Hindu. And so too, the followers of Shintoism, Taoism, and many other tribal religious groups all over the world. They are born to be the given religious followers. In other words, they don't want to convert anybody. In India, when the Parsis, the Zoroastrians, came being driven from Iran, driven out as refugees, when they came to Bombay, they were received. And they had never caused any problem. They live the religion and they are very faithful. They never caused any problem. The Hindus accommodated them as even they accommodated the Christians, the Muslims, and many other small tribal traditions also. Our vision of God allows that. We can accommodate, except one or two very zealous devotees. We generally accept various forms of worship We accept many forms of prayer. One more doesn't really matter to us. In fact, some of our Hindu friends in their puja rooms have a picture of Jesus. And they don't feel anything wrong about it. Nor I feel there is anything wrong about it. These are, I would call them as non-aggressive traditions. For me, aggression is not one thing. It need not be the Kargil type, understand? There are varieties of aggression. You can emotionally be aggressive. In the United States, it's a crime to be aggressive to the children. Simple abuse is looked upon as aggression. Verbally you can be aggressive. Physically you can be aggressive. Economically you can be very aggressive. And within certain legal parameters, you can be aggressive. Morally, you may not be accepted as right. But legally, you may pass right. And the worst aggression I consider, more than physical aggression, like hurting another person, is cultural aggression, religious aggression. Hurt is born of many sources. I am hurt physically if my piece of land that is vacant is encroached upon by somebody, and the court supports that person and gives me the responsibility of finding a new place for him, for his house. It is an aggression. I get hurt. That he encroached upon my property itself is a good source of hurt, is enough to hurt me. That the law protects that person makes me more hurt. That hurt cannot be easily healed, I tell you, because it leaves you helpless. And the helplessness is the source of great hurt. If somebody physically hurts me, of course it is very well known that it is a hurt. It's even a crime, and there is a penalty for it. If I am emotionally abused, then that also is a great hurt caused by some people. So people in authority can abuse me. The employers can abuse me emotionally. Husband can abuse, or wife can also abuse her husband. In-laws can abuse. So that is I am emotionally hurt, I can seek some redress somewhere. And the worst hurt, I would say, is the hurt of a religious person. Whether what the person believes is valid, whether it has got a basis, that's not my domain of inquiry here. I'm not interested in it now. Everybody has a right, a freedom to follow his or her religion. One may have a certain belief system. Either the person is convinced or the person doesn't need to be convinced. He believes the whole thing, a theology, and follows that theology. That person has the freedom to follow the theology. That is human freedom. That religious person is connected to what? Is connected to not any particular person here who is a member of the contemporary society or of his family. I am connected as an individual. I am connected to my parents as their son. So I cannot say I am the son. I am son to my parents. And I am also father. If I am a father, I am a father to my children. I am husband to my spouse. And I am uncle, cousin, neighbor, employer, employee, citizen. I have a number of hats to wear every day. Different roles to play day after day. But the religious me has a person there outside. Like the son is related to a person outside. The brother is related to a person outside. The citizen is related to a country, to a state. And so too, who is that person to whom I am related as a religious person, whom let us just for convenience say devotee? That faithful, the devotee, the believer, is connected to whom? Definitely not to anyone here. I may be a religious son. I may be a religious father, a religious mother, religious wife, religious. In fact, if I am religious, the religious is going to pervade every role I play. Basically, I am first and last a religious person if I am one. That religious person is the basic person, related not to anything empirical, related to a force beyond whatever that force is. One may say that force is God and he is in heaven. Another may say he is in Kailasam. Another may say he is in Vaikuntham. Another may say he is Bhuloka. this is what you call this Goloka Vrindavan. Or another may say elsewhere, elsewhere, elsewhere. But the person related to that is the one whom we call devotee, and that person has an altar. That person is not an empirical person in the sense he is not father, son, mother, daughter, playing roles. He is the basic person. The heart of a basic person is going to be a heart which is deep and true. There is no healing power. There is nothing that can heal that hurt. That is the reason why any religious sentiment is in any way violated. Well, you find that there is martyr. There is a martyr ready to be in that person. And thus, the religious sentiment seems to be the most sensitive. In Indian press, if there is always a complete blackout in terms of who did what. Even names they won't give. One community had a conflict with another community, they will say. I think it is correct also. So that there is no escalation. We generally guesswork. This must be that community, we do some guesswork. Because that sentiment is so deep, and that sentiment should be respected. Whose sentiment, whether it is a Muslim sentiment, or a Christian sentiment, or a Hindu sentiment, or a Buddhist sentiment, a Jewish sentiment, that sentiment has got to be respected. If that respect is not shown, then the state has to protect that sentiment. You tell me or not. You tell me whether it is correct or not. The state has got the responsibility to protect the sentiment, the religious sentiment. That is what I consider secularism. In America, they follow that. The religious sentiment is protected, really. And you can go to the court and get an answer if there is something wrong done to you as a religious person. There is justice. They respect. In fact, if you really register as a religious church, they don't understand any other language. Religious church. So whatever is religion, they take it as church, religious church. You register as a religious church, non-profit, you don't need even to submit your income tax returns to them. Until there is a public complaint. They respect you. They give you that freedom. Here, if you say Hindu religious means immediately, so there is no tax exemption for the donor. It's entirely a different thing altogether here. And therefore, the religious sentiment has got to be respected by every other person, whether that person believes in my religion or not. Just because you don't believe my ideas, that doesn't mean you can stand on my toes. If you don't like my nose, that is your problem. I don't have any problem about that. If my ideas, my belief systems are not acceptable to you, I give you the freedom not to accept my beliefs. But you don't have any business to stand on my toes, to hurt me in any manner. In fact, I will fight for your freedom. You must be free enough to differ from me. Why should you not? Bhagavan has given us a faculty of thinking, of discrimination. We are not shy of such inquiries. Our whole method of inquiry is to invite Purva Pakshas. Objections, even objections that cannot be imagined by you, we will create objections. And afterwards answer, really. We welcome them because we are not shy. We want to explore and find out what the truth is. But that's entirely a different thing. I am here citing this much here, that you have the freedom to differ. I have the freedom to differ from you. If this is so, then we find the second category of religions, by their theologies, they are committed to convert. Conversion is not only sanctioned, but also it is practiced by the theologies. And that is the theology. They have got a right to have their own belief systems. But they don't have a right. They can believe that unless you are a Christian, you will not go to heaven. They have a system, a set of non-verifiable beliefs. Nitya Paroksha. Non-verifiable beliefs. Someone says that I am sent by God to save you. Why? I can say that. I will have 10 people because I can talk. I will have 10 people. If I don't talk, I will be a Mauni Baba, there will be 10 people. If I talk, Swami talks, therefore 10 people. It is easy to get 10 people. In India especially, it is easy. Anywhere you can get 10 people. I can say, God sent me down to save all of you. Once I went to Hill Park, mental hospital, early morning, just for a visit, understand. And it's my own imagination, it's not true. So I went in the morning. The Hill Park Hospital is one of the most ancient hospitals in this country. Do you know mental institution? So this is one of them. Next is Agra. Number 1 is Hill Park. We have got number 1 status in many things. This is one. And I went to this hospital. Early morning, not a crow, all the crows have flown away. Nobody was there. I saw this man standing under this huge Thungmunju Maram. Talking in a loud voice. Listen to me. I have come here to save all of you. You please ask for forgiveness of your sins. Those who want to be saved, please raise your hands. Then he said, thank you, thank you, thank you. From the audience, many people raised their hands. But there was no audience. I am only one behind him, not even in front of him. So I was naturally amused, but not surprised because I knew where I was in. So this is okay. I was not surprised. As I was enjoying this situation, well, I heard a voice from heaven. This is God speaking. I did not send him down. Don't believe him. When I look up, there is one more fellow there. You can believe non-verifiable beliefs. You cannot verify. Somebody tells me that I will go to heaven. That is the goal. Most of these religions are promoters of tourism, really speaking. I am interested in making my life here right now. If there is something you have got to say to make my life different, I have something. I have my ears to you. If there are some other ears, pairs of ears which are ready to listen to some other thing, let them have the freedom. That there is a heaven is a non-verifiable belief. That following this person I will go to heaven, non-verifiable belief. That I will survive death is a non-verifiable belief. There is nothing wrong in believing. I am just telling it is non-verifiable belief. And having gone to heaven, I will enjoy heaven without cricket match, etc., is another non-verifiable belief. The unfortunate thing is there is another fellow who says, I am the latest and the last. Don't follow that fellow, follow me. That really confuses me. He has no convincing argument to prove that. That is another non-verifiable belief. That I am the latest is non-verifiable. That I am the last is non-verifiable. And what is promised is non-verifiable. Understand? But I say, let that non-verifiable beliefs be there. I want them to have them, even though I won't advocate them. I want the freedom. Let them enjoy the freedom to have them. But what is the basis for that person to come and convert me? Yeah, if you are convinced of something, then you can try to convince me, not convert me. Did you ever see a physics professor knocking at your doors, asking for your time so that he could talk to you about particles? Never. You want to learn physics, you go to him. But here, I am every day bothered, really. At the airport I am bothered. In street corners I am bothered. At my home I am bothered. They want to save my souls. I say this is not merely an intrusion. This is an aggression. There is what we call varieties of intrusions. If the sound is too much outside with all these loudspeakers, well, it is an intrusion into the privacy of your neighbor. And he can complain. Not in India, of course. But there are laws here also, I tell you. It's not that we don't have laws. We have laws, but we have got in-laws at the right place, you know. That is the problem. So that nobody has a business to come and intrude into my privacy. To come and tell me that he has got to save my soul. I don't look upon myself as condemned for him to come and save. We don't have really a word equivalent in Sanskrit for this salvation, really. Real equivalent is not there. Because salvation means you should be condemned. Unless you are damned, you don't need to be saved. First this man comes and tells me that I am damned. I have to believe that first. Then he appoints himself to save me. This is very interesting. This is how the union leaders work. You create a problem, afterwards you appoint yourself as the leader to solve it, you know. You become inevitable afterwards. So we don't have a word. We have word moksha. Here we have different, the gurus are here. Every one of them, of course, there is a lot of difference. In some of them, if you allow them to discuss, there will be a fight here, I tell you. So but all of them have got a common word. And the common word is moksha. Is it not true? For every one of them it is moksha. Moksha is not a word which is equivalent to salvation. It is much bandha nivritta. It is from the root which means freedom from bondage. That's all. Each one thinks what is bondage and then he talks about the freedom. But all of them use the word moksha, correct? Even a Sankhya uses. Everybody, Vaisheshika uses, all our various philosophers, all of them use the word moksha. In fact, if moksha is not an end in view, we don't even talk about that. They all have a moksha. Even a Charvaka has got his own concept of moksha. Body ends, that is moksha is this. Basmi, Bhuti, the dehasya punaragamanam kutaha. So, moksha is the word, it is not salvation. If that is so, then they have this particular belief system that you are condemned and you have to be saved. It's really, if I look into these theologies, it will be very interesting. I need not say anything. I have to only state what they say. One thing I would like to say, just for a taste. No, this is purely flavoring the talk. You might have heard about a godfather. The mafia don is called godfather. He makes an offer that you cannot refuse. He comes and tells you that I am buying your house. Not I want to buy your house. I'm buying your house. He says, I am not selling. No, you are selling. That was existing in Madras for some time, I tell you. I hope he doesn't come back again. The fellow comes and tells, I am buying your house. And he says, I am not selling this house, this is my house. I am not selling it, you are selling it. No, I am not selling. You are selling it for this price. He decides the price also. Then he tells him, I know exactly where your children are studying, which school. When they are coming home, I know. Threatens them and buys the house. A godfather is one who makes an offer that you cannot refuse. What about God the Father? He is worse, I tell you. Because he says, either you follow this person, come to heaven, or I will damn you eternally in hell. This is still worse. He makes an offer that I cannot refuse. I cannot refuse. Here at least I can do something. He is another fellow. He is not even visible. He is sitting in a safe place in the heaven, Dubai. I can't do anything about this guy. This is the religion. But he has the right to follow that religion. Let him follow. All that I say is, he doesn't have anything much to offer to me. If he thinks he has got offer to me, he has got the freedom to think so. But he has no freedom to intrude into my privacy. Number two, I would say, if he converts one Hindu by whatever means, by marriage or by some enticement or even by some preaching, creating a fear, it's simple carrot and rod. You talk about the goodies available in heaven. If you go to heaven, you will enjoy this, you will enjoy that, you will be like this, you will be in tune with God, you will have the beatitude, you will be saved and all that. Then you say, or you will go to hell. There will be too hot and all that they talk about. So more out of fear of hell, the fellow chooses to go to heaven. Whatever, if one Hindu is converted or a Jew is converted, a Parsi is converted, the other members of the family, they are not converted. They are all hurt. Even the converted must be hurt underneath a little bit. Whether he was right to do this. It takes some time for him also to heal that. He is also hurt. All other members are definitely hurt. The community that comes to know is hurt. And the people who are concerned and who are interested in saving this culture, etc., they all come to know they are very deeply hurt. You please tell me, what is violence? What is an act if it hurts? What is an act? What do you call this act that hurts? What will you call? I call it is violence. It is not ordinary violence, it is violence of the deepest person in the human being. It is a religious person who is the deepmost. And that person is hurt, I say it is violence, rank and simple. It is pure violence, it is. And what does it do? And this violence wipes out cultures. I would like to go to Greece and see the people, live culture of the Greeks. Where is that culture now? I have to imagine how they might have lived. I only see the huge monuments destroyed. And like this, the Mayan culture is totally destroyed. So those what they call the natives of South America, North America, Australia, they're all hardly very few people, they are in reservations. Destroyed. The Polynesian culture in Hawaii is gone. Cultures, all the tribal cultures in Africa, they are destroyed. How many cultures for the past 2000 years are methodically destroyed? The humanity is the sufferer, poorer for it. We need all the cultures. And let this humanity enjoy the riches of different cultures. It is a mosaic of cultures. Each has got some beauty, something. But with the religion comes the destruction of culture. New religion means culture gone. They may try to do some Bharatanatyam, including this, without Nataraja, where is Bharatanatyam? Without that devotion, where is Nrityam? And therefore culture cannot be retained if the religion is destroyed far. It is true in all other cultures also, but definitely it is true with reference to our culture far. You can't separate culture from religion. Our religion and culture are intertwined. The religion has gone into the fabric of culture. When I say namaste to you, it is culture and it is also religion. And also it is religious wisdom that we have got to back up religion. And when you are throwing rangoli, kolam, it is culture, it is religion, and there is a vision behind that religion also. Every form of culture is connected to religion, and the religion is rooted in the spiritual wisdom because we have a spiritual tradition. And therefore, there is no cultural form unconnected to religion. Destruction of culture is destruction of religion. Destruction of religion is destruction of culture. If destruction is not violence, what is violence? I would like to know. I say conversion is violence. And it is rank violence. The violence of the deepmost violence it is. Not only that, it is in our Dharma Shastra said that if somebody occupies another's land, piece of land, the Papa is Atataya, Papa he is called Atatayin. For an Atatayi in our culture, there was in our Dharma Shastra, there is capital punishment. Occupying others' land, others' flat, others' house. And when the owner asks, please give me the house, which house? No, my house. Your house? Oh, I'm sorry, I cannot give you because my children are going to the school. I can't give you. This is what they say. Then they say, please find out a house somewhere near. Then I will move. Then you find out a house near. No, not that house, that is too far for my children. If it is somewhere in the neighborhood, then you find a neighborhood. No, that neighborhood house, it has no yard. You have got a yard here. So this is what I want. In fact, I would like to be here. You go to the court, 25 years gone. But that's not our culture. Another's kshetra is another's kshetra. It has nothing to do with me. Kshetra apahari is an atatayi, capital punishment. The one who commits arson or poisons somebody, capital punishment. The one who kidnaps somebody's wife, etc., is a capital punishment. It's all capital punishment. And if for simple occupation of others' land is capital punishment, think of that. Suppose somebody is ashastrapani. If someone who has no shastra to defend himself, he has no ayudam, he has no weapon to defend himself, and you kill him, and he is an atatayi, the one who kills him is an atatayi. Karna in the Mahabharata used this argument. When he was completely unarmed, he used this argument. So talking to Arjuna, I am an ashastrapani, you should not hit me now. Krishna had to tell him he is not unarmed, he is disarmed. There is a lot of difference between the two. He had to convince him. So here, a Hindu is an ashastrapani. A Jew is an ashastrapani. A Parsi is an ashastrapani. A Buddhist is an ashastrapani. You cannot ask me to change the genius of my culture, genius of my religion. There is no free for all situation here. You convert, I convert, and whoever has got better organization is going to convert more. This is not percentage of market, I tell you. Here it is one-sided. I cannot change the genius of my culture because I don't believe in conversion. I allow you to be a Christian, you be a Christian, be a Muslim, you pray, it is fine for us. Even though I don't say all religions lead to the same goal, I don't commit that mistake, the ubiquitous mistake. But I give the freedom. You please follow your religion. And don't ask me to convert like you because I cannot convert. I don't believe in it. My parents didn't believe in it. My grandparents didn't believe in it. My rishis didn't believe in it. And I don't believe in it. You cannot ask a culture to change in order to be on par with the others. So it is against the genius of our culture. Not only our culture, there are many other cultures like that. Parsi's number is dwindling. I loathe to see the destruction of that Parsi culture. They are harmless, good people. But they are the losers. The Jews are the losers. The number is dwindling. If they are fighting, it is to fight to preserve, I tell you, not to convert. They are not converting. There are no converting Jews. There is no evangelism in Judaism. There is no proselytization. There was never inquisition. They were the sufferers, they were the victims of aggression and planned aggression. And for ages, any criticism only makes them come back with more virulence, more missionaries, more money portion. And therefore, I find it is not merely violence against people, it is violence against people who are committed to non-violence. I don't say Hindus don't fight, they can fight like cocks. Don't tell me you put your house in order, I will put my house in order in my own time, in my own way. If two brothers are fighting over an empty land that is there next door, they are fighting how that should be divided, etc. And a third man occupies because you are all fighting, therefore I am occupying. What is that logic? Some people advance this logic to me that we are all fighting, that is why they are scoring. Yeah, we are fighting, it is our accounts to settle, that doesn't mean they can be violent. Somebody tells me, Swamiji, we must have ecumenical dialogues. I had attended some of the dialogues and I stopped attending them. Because I don't find any reason, once I told this also. I can have a dialogue with a Christian if he is ready to change his stand, if I am convincing to him. Is he going to stand if he is going to change his stand? Or is he going to stop conversion? That's enough. Don't ask me to have a dialogue standing on my toes. You just move away. All these World Religious Conference are all meant to neutralize any kind of protest against conversion, that's all. Because they don't want to stop conversion. So what is this talking? We are all same, we are all going to the same God, we are worshipping same God anyway. It is something like saying, Your property is my property is your property. Your money is my money is your money, my money be with me, your money also be with me. இந்த பைத்தியக்காரத்தனை இது என்ன அது? They don't believe in this. Neither you help them nor we help ourselves. So these are all wrong thinking. All forms of prayer are valid. That I can accept. They don't accept that. I can accept because of my understanding of the Shastra. I can accept. The Lord will understand definitely. If I pray in Tamil, if I pray in Latin or Greek, there is nothing Latin and Greek to the Lord. He will understand in whichever language. If I pray in Sanskrit, definitely he will understand because that is his language anyway. I am very Catholic, understand?